Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are unpacking a really specific perspective on where the furniture you use might actually come from.
Yes, we're diving into a comparison looking at furniture manufacturing in China versus Vietnam, but through the lens of one particular source.
Exactly. And that source is an article called Why China Beats Vietnam in Furniture Manufacturing. It's written by Sunbin Qi, who is the CEO of a company called ASKT.
Right. So important to note, this is their perspective we're exploring today.
Absolutely. Our mission isn't to declare a winner overall. It's really to dig into this specific source, understand the case ASKT makes for why they think China is the better choice for, well, serious furniture group buyers.
And pull out the key arguments, the details, maybe some of the surprising things they highlight.
Okay, so let's unpack this source.
So the big picture claim ASKT makes right off the bat is that even though Vietnam's manufacturing sector has grown a lot, China, especially companies like them, still has the edge for those significant furniture orders.
Right. And they jump straight into, well, the most obvious comparison point, cost. You hear a lot about lower labor costs, say, in Vietnam.
The article actually gives figures based on their data, something like $285 average monthly wage in Vietnam versus $990 in China.
That sounds like a huge difference. But ASKT says, wait a minute, looking just at that wage number, it's misleading.
Yeah, they really push back on that. Their argument revolves around what they call the true cost. They say, okay, wages are higher in China, sure, but the huge scale of industrialization and, crucially, their heavy investment in automation, that dramatically lowers the overall production costs. It kind of offsets that wage difference.
Okay, automation, what kind of examples do they give?
They get specific about their own factory. They mention things like automatic welding robotic arms, machines for cutting fabric really precisely, even automatic nailing machines.
So less manual labor needed, more efficiency.
Exactly. That's the argument. Less reliance on manpower, much higher efficiency per worker, which ultimately brings down the cost for each piece of furniture produced.
And it's not just the cost to make it, is it? They also bring up costs that happen later.
Right. The downstream costs. Their point is if you have better quality control during production, you get fewer defects later on.
Which saves the buyer money.
Yeah.
Fewer returns, less time sorting out problems, that sort of thing.
Precisely. And they tie this back to their own investment. They cite putting over $20,000 just into 12 different testing machines.
12 machines, wow. What do they test?
Things that really matter for furniture. Durability, strength, safety, making sure it holds up. And ASKT claims this investment directly leads to lower return and defect rates for their clients compared to, well, what they suggest is common from Vietnam.
Okay, that's a strong link they're drawing between investment and buyer benefit. So moving past pure cost, the source really hammers on quality control systems and certifications too.
Yeah, they acknowledge that, okay, maybe 70% of Vietnamese factories are reported as ISO certified. ISO 9001 is that big quality management standard.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Well, their but is that just having the certificate isn't the same as rigorously implementing it. They argue not all certifications are, let's say, enforced equally.
So how do they claim to be different?
This part is quite interesting. They say it's not just about having ISO 9001, it's about enforcing it through a really transparent system. They actually use video documentation.
Video. How does that work?
They say they have 11 inspectors, right? And each one wears a professional video recorder while they're doing the quality check.
Seriously, they film everything?
Apparently so. They film every test, like seat impact tests, dropping weights on chairs or static load tests, putting heavy weight on to check strength. And the source argues this creates, well, a huge amount of transparency. It builds trust, especially with demanding European clients, and it ensures the quality is consistently high. You can literally see the proof.
That video detail is. Yeah, that's very specific. It really backs up the claim in a concrete way. They also mentioned something about German home mock-ups.
Oh, right. In their R&D center, they have these mock-ups of typical German home settings. So buyers can actually visualize the furniture in situ, in a relevant market context.
That shows they're thinking beyond just the factory floor.
Definitely. And that kind of leads into their next big point, which is about product innovation and their capacity for customization.
Ah, yes. This is where, as the source puts it, things get really interesting. They contrast what they describe as potentially limited customization options in Vietnam, maybe due to resource constraints, they suggest, with what ASKT can do.
And they list their resources to back this up. 4 dedicated R&D centers spread across different key furniture hubs in China, Bazhou, Anji, places like that.
4 centers. That's significant.
Plus, they talk about having really experienced staff, like expert pattern cutters with 20 years on the job. That's deep expertise.
And speed. They made a claim about speed, didn't they?
Yeah, pretty bold one. They claim they can prototype custom chairs in as little as 10 days.
10 days for a custom prototype. That's fast. Really fast.
It speaks to their agility, or at least the agility they're claiming. They also give examples of technical innovations, like developing safer 360-degree rotation mechanisms for chairs, or engineering stronger bases specifically for certain client needs. It suggests active product development.
Okay, so innovation is key. Then they shift gears a bit to environmental responsibility.
Right. Now, they do acknowledge that Vietnam might rank higher overall on something like the Environmental Performance Index, the EPI.
Good, Kim.
But again, they argue their specific actual practices are very strong, often meeting or even beating standards elsewhere, largely because they have to comply with strict European green policies.
And they have a specific example here too, right? The packaging.
Yes, the Zero Plastic Packaging Initiative. This seems quite pioneering. Instead of typical plastic wrap and foam, they're using recyclable honeycomb paper, paper tape, and even reusable non-woven fabric bags.
That sounds good environmentally, but does it help the buyer?
They quantify it. They claim this switch reduces the client's costs related to plastic taxes and packaging by over 15% a year.
15%. Okay, that's a tangible saving.
And, they add, it even helps avoid potential customs problems you might get with non-compliant packaging materials. So it's presented as both green and good for business logistics.
Makes sense. They also touch on materials.
Briefly, yeah. Using Oeko-Tex Standard 100 certified fabrics, basically meaning they're tested free of harmful substances, safe even for baby products, and using recycled materials when possible.
Got it. Okay, point 5 in their argument is worker welfare, ethical compliance.
They state pretty clearly that human rights are core to how they operate.
And how do they back that up?
While they mention their factories are BSCI certified, that's the Business Social Compliance Initiative, a pretty common standard buyers look for regarding ethical working conditions. And they give examples of safety measures, like workers handling glue get proper gas masks, cutters get metal cut-resistant gloves, things like that. Plus, training for everyone.
And the contrast they draw, according to the source.
The implication is that this level of consistent protection and certified practice might not be universal in Vietnam, especially, they suggest, in smaller workshops that maybe lack the resources for the same investment in safety and compliance.
It's about showing they meet those international ethical standards consistently.
Exactly. Then point 6 is about strategic global presence and reputation.
The idea here being that Chinese manufacturers, especially long-established ones like ASKT, have decades of experience working globally.
Right. That long-term exposure, building relationships. They have a very specific anecdote here.
Oh.
The CEO, Sunbin Qi, was featured on the cover of a major German furniture trade magazine, Möbelmarkt, in February 2025.
On the cover.
Yeah, and they frame it as a big deal, the first Asian furniture CEO to get the cover. They present it as proof of their commitment and standing, particularly in the crucial European market.
So it's not just about making things. It's about being seen as a reliable, established partner.
That's the message. They see themselves as strategic partners who understand the nuances of different markets, consumer behavior, retail dynamics, that whole picture.
Okay, that makes sense. And the final point they really emphasize is logistics.
Logistical maturity and scalability. The source basically describes China's overall logistics network, ports, rail, warehousing as one of the most developed and efficient in the world.
And the benefit for ASKT's clients.
Predictability and scale. They argue this mature infrastructure means they can offer timely deliveries across Europe, lead times you can rely on, and importantly, the ability to handle really large orders.
For who? Like big buyers.
Exactly. Wholesalers, supermarket chains, major e-commerce platforms, buyers who need massive volume and reliable supply chains. It's about being able to scale up easily.
Right. So if we pull all that together, what's the core message from ASKT in this article?
In essence, their conclusion is, look, Vietnam is definitely a growing player, no doubt. But for serious buyers needing high volume, consistent quality, advanced features, and reliable delivery, China, represented by companies like us who've invested heavily in technology, QC, sustainability, and logistics, still offers a more holistic and advanced solution.
It really comes back to those specific examples they gave, doesn't it? The QC investment payback, the video transparency, the fast prototyping, the packaging savings, the ethical certs, the logistics network.
Exactly. They're arguing that all those pieces together provide a kind of value and peace of mind that goes way beyond just looking at that initial labor wage number.
It's a detailed pitch for why their specific model in China remains competitive, especially for certain types of global buyers.
Definitely a comprehensive case from their perspective.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
Well, I think understanding a detailed argument like this, straight from a major industry player, gives you really valuable insight. Yeah, into just how complex global manufacturing and supply chain decisions are. It's not simple.
It shows how companies build their case. It's not just price anymore, is it? It's technology, quality, innovation, sustainability, ethics. All these factors are on the table when buyers are choosing where to source from.
And this article gives you a really specific window into how one company positions itself using those arguments in a very competitive field.
Absolutely. It's just one perspective, of course, but it's laid out with a lot of detail from their side.
Which naturally leads to a final thought for you to consider.
Go on.
Well, this source presents a really strong case for China based on ASKT's specific experience and investments. But
Yeah.
how might the picture look different if we had a similar deep dive from, say, a leading Vietnamese manufacturer?
Highlighting their unique strengths, their investment.
Exactly. Or, perhaps even more revealing, what if our source was a major furniture buyer, someone who's actually worked extensively with factories in both China and Vietnam? What different factors might they prioritize?
That's a great point. Seeing it from those other angles would definitely add more layers to the story. Something to think about.
Understanding those multiple perspectives is always crucial in these complex global industries, isn't it?
Indeed it is. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into this particular source on furniture manufacturing. Thanks for joining us as we unpacked ASKT's perspective.
Yeah, and if this sparked your interest, you could definitely look up some of the things we mentioned, maybe BSCI standards or Okiko text, or even check out those manufacturing regions like Bazou or Anji. Lots to explore.